Yeah, did you ride your bike?
Howdy, howdy. It's Trisha Lee. Welcome to the Disruptive Technology Hangout. With us today is my business partner, Larry Lieber, and a member of our mastermind team, Daniel Thomas. And tonight we're going to be talking more about solar power, one of our favorite topics that we talk about a lot. And specifically, we decided to discuss Ivanpah. I do believe that we have discussed them in previous hangouts on a more broad, in a more broad sense, but we want to specifically hone in on Ivanpah and what's going on in the Mojave Desert. I believe it's in California. So, Larry, do you want to describe what they do at Ivanpah, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges that they're having and do a little bit of comparison to what we're working on in comparison to what goes on in Ivanpah. But just for people that may be watching that don't know what Ivanpah is, can you describe basically what it does for us?
It's a solar thermal generating plant, so they generate electricity by using mirrors and reflecting the sun onto a focal point or a tower, which is filled with molten salt, and the molten salt is used to carry heat to some steam turbines, and then that's how they turn the steam turbines, is using the heat. So essentially they focus many mirrors onto the top of this tower, and actually I think Ivanpah's got three or four towers working in the desert, in the desert in California. And each tower generates, I think all together the towers generate, I think it's 394 megawatts of power, something like that. It's quite a bit of power. And the mirrors, yeah, they just focused on the top of this tower, which is colored black somehow. I'm not sure exactly how it's colored, but that's what soaks up the heat and transfers it to the molten salt.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I have of Ivanpah been really impressed with their ability to get this project off the ground, because it's absolutely huge. It takes up, I think, thousands of acres. So I'm going to get into some of the challenges that they've been having at Ivanpah. And most recently, they had a little bit of a setback when a couple of the mirrors went offline from something messed up with the tracking system, and they ended up lighting one of the control rooms in the towers on fire, which I imagine can be super expensive. From what I understand, no one was hurt. However, some equipment was damaged. So can you tell us a bit more about this fire that occurred? I believe it was 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, they didn't seem to really talk a lot about it. The company that runs it, Bright Source Energy and Bechtel, they're probably not too happy about the situation. But basically what happened was, as you mentioned, some of the mirrors malfunctioned. And it must have been several mirrors. They didn't report how many, but instead of focusing up high onto the tower, somehow they slipped down and ended up cooking the floor of a lot of electrical equipment and ducts and stuff. There's actually some photos online about the damage, and you can see a lot of the ducts and things that probably carry molten salt were toasted. And because it's a weird sort of fire, because very similar to our technology using the Fresnel lens, with mirrors, many mirrors focused on a target, being the tower. When it slips down and those mirrors focus on something else, they just start burning, and they won't stop burning until they burn through what they're burning. So it's not like any kind of actual fire that we're used to hearing about, because the energy is almost like a laser beam hitting all this equipment and burning it. And so they probably caught it really fast, because obviously they've got sensors all over the place, so that if something like this happens, they're able to adjust the focal point of the mirrors to where they should be, or else take them on and put them on standby, which is basically point them upwards, so they don't reflect the sunlight onto the tower. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So they probably went off focus for, I would say, probably less than 30 seconds, because I know from personal experience, when focusing the sunlight, it takes very little time for the sunlight, when it's concentrated that much, it takes very little time to do serious damage. So yeah, it was probably, just by looking at the pictures, I would say they were probably offline for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 10 to 30 seconds, because that much energy, it doesn't take long to burn. And it should be noted that if they did not have those sensors that went off probably as soon as they went astray, that whole plant would have probably disintegrated within minutes. Like, that floor would have probably been vaporized by the sunlight.
Dan, if you just go at the top, you can unmute. I just muted you because there was some background noise when we started.
Oh.
Did you see the pictures from the fire yet?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I just heard about it.
Okay, well, I only found one, so obviously they're not really too keen on letting this information out, but I'll just show it to you guys. And you can see, like, where it's melted. You can see it? Can you see it, Larry?
It was
yeah, I see it.
I see Dan.
See here where the ducts are melted, and down here. So there doesn't look like very much smoke damage, so they may have even cleaned it up a bit before they took the picture.
Well, like I say, just looking at that picture, that to me is just a matter of seconds doing that much damage, because as you know, when you focus that much sunlight on a spot, it'll just start disintegrating what's ever in the sunlight's path, because it's so focused and intense. It'll just start disintegrating stuff.
On my satellite dish, I focus at the focal point. If I get the focal point on the wood, it takes about 10 seconds for it to start a fire.
Well, with the Fresnel lens, it's instantaneous. So with this many mirrors going offline, it's probably, just by looking at the damage, I think it might have been all the mirrors on that side of the tower that were incorrectly aligned. Because, I'm pretty sure that all the Ivanpah mirrors on each section of the tower, like the 4 sections, each section is independently focused. So when they focus one mirror on a 1/4 section, all the other mirrors focus with that one mirror. So they all focus at the same time. So that could have been the entire field of mirrors on that side actually off focus. And like I say, they don't have to go very far to be off focus to do that much damage. And I'm pretty sure that floor where the damage took place is right underneath the black stuff, the collecting area. So I'm not sure what it is that's in front of that, whether it's open. I don't think it's open. We'd have to look at pictures of the wall of the tower in that area to find out what exactly the mirrors focus through, whether they focus through windows or what.
Pictures which don't seem to exist. Yeah, basically all the that's the only picture that I found of the fire damage, and every other picture of Ivanpah is a giant scale picture where they show like the whole plant. They don't really have close-ups as to what their tower looks like inside or anything like that that I could find. But the article that I read about the fire said that this has been just the tip of the iceberg with the problems that they've had, and definitely this is not even anywhere near the biggest issue that they've been dealing with over there in the Mojave Desert. Initially, before they were even able to build the solar plant, they had to relocate tortoises that's where they live in the Mojave Desert, and they gathered up hundreds, maybe even more, of these tortoises, and they moved them off to a wildlife area or some other place, and apparently they had a bunch of them escape. So before they even started construction, you can imagine the animal rights, environmentalists, that conservationists, all those types of people were very upset because in an effort to be sustainable, we should not have to be relocating wildlife. It's kind of counterproductive. And so, but they made it through that, and they were able to get their plant built, and then they shortly after discovered, once they got online, they discovered that the mirrors, like you say, when they concentrate the sun, they're like laser beams going through the sky. So they actually had birds flying through the area that were literally being zapped out of the sky by the rays from these mirrors. And apparently they came up with a solution, a semi-solution for that problem, where they've been able to put up some scare devices, kind of like scarecrow idea, where they a loud noise will be made, or maybe they have cannons that fire off, like at the tailings ponds in the oil sands, that are designed to scare the birds out of their probably natural flight path. So once again, there's an issue of death to animals, in addition to now they're relocating them and trying to get them to take another flight path that doesn't get them in harm's way. The plant is massive. It takes up acres and acres and acres and acres and acres. And I thought that out there in the Mojave Desert that water would be an issue, because obviously these mirrors have to be kept clean to be able to work efficiently. But Larry just informed me that China, I believe you said it was in China, they came up with a solution where they're able to clean mirrors and solar panels and probably anything you want using a type of robot. Do you want to talk about the solution that they came up with for cleaning the mirrors, Larry?
Yeah, there's quite a few different products on the market now. I'm not sure who started it off, but India came up with a real simple design. And I was just going to mention that on the Ivanpah or Bechtel website for Ivanpah, they have a pretty good close-up picture of the tower, and it looks like the tower that might have been toasted. It is actually the first floor underneath, or the first level underneath the solar target. That.
Do you want to show us, Larry? On the left hand, there's a little green icon. If you click on that, you can it'll show you the window, and just pick the one that has the picture.
Sure.
Yeah. It's a green thing with an arrow. It says screen share.
Yeah, I'm just checking it out here.
When you hit that, your windows should come up.
Yep.
Yeah, because I couldn't find any pictures like that. So, and then in addition, I also read something which was news to me that I didn't know before. To switch tabs. There we go. So you'll have to talk so it'll come up.
Oh, okay. Actually, I just Googled the tower, and I'm just finding it right now on their website. I was actually sometimes the pictures they have when you oh there it is right here. Do you see it?
Yeah, if you click on it, does it get bigger?
No, but
No.
on this one,
It's not really a great close up, is it?
it's. Can you see this one?
Yeah, but like I seen those pictures when I was looking too, but like I said, it doesn't really give you a great close up.
Yeah, I think you're right,
It
and there seems to be a large congestion of piping in that area there, so that's I imagine, you know, probably if they're off the target, that's probably where they're hitting, which is pretty bad. It's a pretty
Yeah,
long
so it
ways to
looks
be
like it's
off.
open. So it's open, so it didn't like burn through the wall. It just hit the, and probably maybe that's something they'll be looking into is putting up some kind of shielding for that stuff, so that if that happens again, that not as much damage will occur. I know that with our Fresnel lens, we put heat shielding on the inside, and when our device went offline, it did burn the heat shielding, but it didn't really damage anything. So probably if they had a little more experience and foresight, they would have realized that that would be something to look into, and they could have had heat shielding up on all of that. And as soon as they probably would have burnt their heat shielding, but they probably would have saved a lot of damage. And then something I just discovered today that I wasn't aware of is that there was also an issue that they were having with pilots being blinded. So when pilots would fly near the Ivanpah site, sometimes the mirrors would be in a certain direction that they would reflect to the plane, and the pilots were like not able to see where they were going until they cleared the area. And so it's been really, really impressive to see how the people, Bechtel and the companies and people involved with Ivanpah have been able to persevere because, yeah, they've had some major setbacks and obstacles and all kinds of just struggles as they have been able to create this what should be something that leads us closer to sustainability. And I think it's really interesting what they've been doing. However, I am a firm believer that we found a better way, and so I'm just describe briefly what we're doing with our patented prototype with King Sunshine Solar Systems. So basically what it is a Fresnel lens. It's very similar to what they're trying to do at Ivanpah, except for instead of having to have thousands and thousands of acres and thousands of mirrors, we're basically able to generate a very similar amount of heat using a big magnifying glass. And so yeah, definitely the heat. When the sun is focused with that magnifying glass, it is instantaneous, like melt your face off or melt anything in its path. So basically this big lens tracks the sun and keeps the focal point on a target where we're heating up fluid that's being pumped to thermal electric generators. So do either of you want to share how you feel that our product is going to, or potentially our own solar power plant is going to stack up against what Ivanpah has been doing? Larry?
Well, I think you got to hand it. Bechtel's been around. They've been doing this for a while. The company's over 100 years old, but I think they've only been in the solar end of things for not a really long time. I think it's safe to say that our solar heat collector and electro crown, it's not going to cause pilots any trouble when they're flying. Um, and it's probably not going to take up as much space as the Ivan Ivanpah plant takes up. It's kind of a similar design, except I think we're generally going to have a smaller footprint. A lot of that has to do with um, the fact that the uh, power is made. It's not. We're not reflecting sunlight through a distance to a certain target. It's all contained in the solar heat collector, so we're not moving the heat a very far long distance. So we're also not going to affect the paths of birds. I don't think we're going to disrupt any uh, nature. I think we're a lot more nature friendly because that was kind of one of the main focal points of when we started working on the invention, was to make sure we could keep the grass green underneath it and set the machine up in places where nature would not be affected by the operation of the device. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, my one of my main focuses working with you guys on this project has been keeping it affordable, because basically that's how we came up with this idea, was that we had purchased some photovoltaic solar panels, and we wired them all up and started using them, and we realized, oh man, we're going to need a lot more of these to be able to be off grid, which was our goal, was to build a house that would be off the grid. And just looking at, this was a while back, and at the time the price of photovoltaics was kind of out of our reach. And so we thought, we knew about Fresnel lenses, and we thought, well, what if we took one of these Fresnel lenses and focused it on our solar panels? Would we be able to make more power? And so Larry got the Fresnel lens, and we started experimenting with it, and we realized right away that no, the Fresnel lens would just melt the solar panels, and it wouldn't work. But we were really amazed with the amount of heat energy that's created by a Fresnel lens, and we thought, well, how can we use this this energy in a valuable way? And so we just started working on this stuff. And it's kind of funny because the first trade show that we went to, we actually found a company. Larry will have to maybe fill in the details, but we discovered a company that was using very small Fresnel lenses and focusing them onto teeny tiny little solar panels. And then they had these little radiators, like a radiator that you would have in your car, to deal with the heat and prevent the solar panels from melting. And we thought, I saw that and I just thought, that's crazy. Why wouldn't they just take that heat and create steam with it to turn all these turbines? Because that's how we've made power for a long, long time. And so I believe that with these coal plants going offline, they have the infrastructure already in place with these steam turbines. I believe that if we scaled up the Fresnel lens, that there's great potential to be able to create the steam and turn those turbines in the coal-fired plants, at least during sunlight hours. And then I'm not sure, it would have to definitely be supplemented at nighttime, maybe with wind or something. And then, yeah, so Larry, do you remember the name of that company, the Fresnel lens solar panels and the little radiators that they were trying to keep them cool with? You're muted.
I don't remember the name of the company, but it was probably a Spectral Lab product, because Spectral Lab is making the multi-junctioned smaller solar cells that are used for concentrated solar power. Hey, Dad, did you fall asleep there or what? I was wondering, I was just going to ask you regarding the, what was I going to ask you now? something to do with what Trish was just saying. The what was it now? Something to do with the design of the small solar cells. You know the ones I'm talking about, right?
Definitely, I think that with what we're doing, we can incorporate photovoltaics. We've talked about that a lot because in addition to the heat, there's the light source that thus far we haven't utilized that in our system yet. However, there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to line the inside of the device with PV panels to...
Well, I think that with what we're doing right now, which we can't really talk a lot about yet, because we're just in the testing stage of the new materials. The new materials that we're using right now might themselves be able to create electricity. There's a really good possibility of that, based on what we know of the construction of different types of solar cells. Now, these solar cells that are used for the Fresnel lenses that you're talking about with the tiny little cells, they're cooled using a superconductor type of technology to cool the backside of the solar cells, because just like anything else, when you focus sunlight onto something like a solar cell, it's going to get incredibly hot, no matter what size it is. Even if it's the size of a magnifying glass, like a small magnifying glass, that focal point's going to get really hot. And in order for the solar cell to maintain its integrity, you've got to cool it so that it doesn't vaporize. So yeah, it's a little strange that they use that technique, but that technique is also used for cooling superconductors in computers and things like that. So I think that's where they're getting their technology, is they're borrowing the technology from the superconductor industry in regards to hardware.
Actually, I was just thinking we wouldn't be able to put photovoltaics inside because it'd be too hot. The photovoltaics works better in Alberta because of the cooler weather than they do in California, because it's naturally cooler up here.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, that reminds me of a point with Ivanpah and most of the other solar thermal plants. They're using the molten salt, and because of what Dan's talking about, our cooler temperatures, especially in the winter in Alberta, that molten salt thing, they would not be able to keep it hot at nighttime. Here in California they can, but here apparently they wouldn't be able to. That's why there's nothing on the horizon for these plants in Canada. There's some other places in the US, probably in the desert as well, that are doing smaller scale things similar to Ivanpah. I got to tour a solar trough power plant in Arizona when I was there, and yeah, it's there. They were still using water to clean the mirrors, and so and people there were having a bit of an issue with that, because obviously in the desert of Arizona, water is a scarce resource, and so I'm sure they're using tons of this water to wash these mirrors and keep them clean. However, at this point, they may have adopted this new technology that scrubs them with these little robots. But yeah, the molten salt idea, it's not exactly designed for Canada. So that's another thing with what we're doing. We've been striving to make sure it's going to work here, and basically if it'll work here, it'll probably work anywhere, because it doesn't get much more harsh as far as climate goes than northern Canada. So definitely that's something that we've taken into consideration. So these other projects like Ivanpah, they will not work certain areas, places that are prone to freezing. That salt's they're not going to be able to keep that salt molten. So yeah, it's been really interesting, because basically ever since we started on this project, I think we started right around the same time construction at Ivanpah began. So it's been really, really awesome to watch their progress and what they've been able to accomplish, and what their problems have been. It's definitely been like a playbook for us to follow of, okay, well, we don't want to have that issue, so we can solve it before we even start building any kind of factory or hiring employees or dealing with all this other stuff that will come up in the future. But I think probably there was a ton of work that went on behind the scenes before construction of this plant started. So who knows how long it was in the works beforehand. But as a business owner, I'm stalking this company, and I just want to know everything that happens there and what they're doing, because I see them as a direct competitor. And basically our goal is to beat them in the marketplace with more affordability and higher efficiency. So that's basically always been the goal. And so, yeah, it's it's been kind of interesting experience, because I've had Ivanpah pointed out to me by a lot of people that don't know that I already know about it, that I'm well aware, and they know what we've been working on. And so those, I've got several messages, emails, and stuff like, oh wow, check this out. It's like, yeah, I already know about it, and I know about the birds dying. Did you know that? And these people that are showing me this and telling me how cool it is and how much better it is than what I'm doing are not aware of the issues that have occurred. And so looking at what we're doing and looking at what they're doing, it's very easy to see and to say that they're like so much better, and that we're totally out of their league because they actually have an online power plant. However, I think that with our particular design for concentrated solar power, we've eliminated a lot of the issues that they've had, and I feel pretty confident that we could construct one of these solar heat collectors that could turn a turbine like what's in that tower, or those 3 towers, and make an equivalent amount of electricity for a lot less money.
Well, I think with the whole Ivanpah situation, it kind of makes you wonder why they didn't have a safety mechanism installed similar to the one that we're going to have, where with our system we're going to have something like an airbag which inflates to keep anything from burning, and the airbag is going to be basically a foil similar to your foil balloons. It'll inflate as soon as it realizes there's an unprecedented temperature increase in any of the sensitive components. This thing will go off and reflect any sunlight away from components. It makes me wonder why Ivanpah does not have that sort of system installed with their towers, being that their towers are so powerful, you know.
And expensive. I'm sure all of that stuff that got damaged is really expensive to replace.
Well, any kind of major power facility that produces 392 megawatts, it's not going to be a cheap facility. Anything like that is going to be quite an expensive thing. And Dan and I were talking about that exact thing in regards to switching from coal to natural gas for some applications for electricity. We know that that is one of the main options when the government starts talking about shutting down coal plants and switching over to a more of a renewable resource, being solar, wind, hydro, things like that. But for the time being, I think that even if they were to switch from coal to natural gas, which burns a heck of a lot cleaner than coal, they might be able to, make it a gradual process. Switch from coal, go to natural gas, until they get the infrastructure to have it all done by solar, because all this stuff was going to take time. And that's kind of what Dan was saying, is that in order to do that kind of change, it costs millions and millions of dollars, because they are still paying for the work that they already done for.
Yeah, some coal plants were just newly put in, so they don't want to switch because they just spent money to build a high-priced coal plant. Because coal is cheap.
Which is why I think that, you know, that infrastructure already exists. We don't want to burn coal. Potentially, one of these big lenses could make that steam during the day, and then if it's cloudy or at nighttime, then potentially the natural gas could create steam.
Actually, the good news is I was on the Eco Home Tour on the weekend, and at NATE, they had all these technologies, and they were telling me, they asked me how much Alberta had for megawatts, and I said 5. And he said, well, a year ago it was 5. It's doubled now. It's 10. And they're expected to keep doubling in the short term, and shorter and shorter, especially if the government comes up with incentives. So we might be getting into the photovoltaic industry a lot faster than people realize now, too.
Well, it's pretty easy.
Well, the footprint is very small because every household could have them.
Yeah.
You already got the footprint with the house there anyway.
Yeah, we lost Larry, but yeah, definitely. Photovoltaics are already like proven and reliable, and so, you know, while this new technology is being tested and bugs are being worked out of the new style solar plants like Ivanpah, while that transition is going on.
The sad thing about Ivanpah, you have to ship that power somewhere in mega amounts. So I think it's best to go put up photovoltaics on every household. You got the power right where you need it.
So definitely initially with our Fresnel lens design, initially that was the intention, was just to make small units like the prototype that we're dealing with and sell them to individuals that are looking to, you know, either be off grid or minimize their power bills, or to kind of Larry's idea was to create like do-it-yourself kits. However, to me, with this plan for North America to eliminate coal, they're going to want to take massive action really quickly, and I just see that. I feel
the trouble with gas, it's good too, but there's also problems now with fracking. So it's still, you've got to watch with natural gas what you do. But everything has a downside. Natural gas does burn cleaner, but it does have a footprint.
Definitely.
A lot of
what's the downside of downside of our prototype? I don't know, that it leaks, right? That it's leaked in the past, so that'll be an issue that we'll have to make sure that there's no leaking, and we'll have to have like safety measures in place to make sure that that fluid stays in place, because this fluid, when it is heated up by the sun, it's like hot. Definitely don't want to have that leaking or spraying out. And I think we're dealing with low pressure, so it's not like it would, you know, be probably no one would get hurt. Thus far, nobody's got hurt when there's been leaking. However, the brake fluid.
No, but definitely we got to figure that out, because the system isn't going to work if it's leaking anyway. So.
Well, I'm more concerned with the environmental impact of having that brake onto the ground.
We wouldn't want that either. We want to minimize it.
As long as everything's connected to code, every connection that we use for our piping is all certified. So whatever it's rated at, and so that takes us kind of out of the loop when it comes to liability, especially when you're using other components.
We're using fittings that are good for 40 pounds pressure, which we're only using 10. So.
Did you cover your mic? I can hardly hear you.
Oh, sorry. I don't think so.
Well, that's better.
Very loud and clear.
So
Were
I
you,
was
were you,
just going to carry on with what I was saying before I got
yeah.
disconnected there. Did you catch anything about what I was saying
No,
about?
start over.
Yeah, what I was going to say was with the all the talk about photovoltaics in Alberta going to a photovoltaic sort of infrastructure for switching to renewable energy. I think they have to be really careful right now, especially because of this new technology that just came out of Australia that we were talking about last week. But when you go from your efficiency of 22% up to 37%, that, in my books, from a business standpoint, that makes every photovoltaic product on the market virtually obsolete, which means it's almost
Potentially.
well, it's almost like buying a gas burning vehicle and then all of a sudden an electric vehicle comes out,
Well,
or
they're not going to change the panels they've got, but if they ever want to add more power, they'll definitely look at the newer system.
Well, potentially, at the moment, I'm going to echo there, but potentially at the moment, what I read about the Australia photovoltaics is that they're prohibitively expensive at the moment. So at the moment,
They have to get the
it's
cost down.
not, they're not, the first electric cars were available in this era. They were way, way more expensive than, your regular sedans, and now they've kind of come closer to being on par. So that's what will probably happen. PVs will continue to be inexpensive and this technology will not make them obsolete until it is as affordable. Basically, is what I understood from what we learned.
Right now, Nate is saying that they used to, because the panels are so expensive, they used to angle them to the sun at a certain point, but now they're so inexpensive that you just can lay them on the roof and forget the racking because the racking is more expensive than the panel itself.
Yeah.
And so you got to weigh the pros and cons of which direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big supporter of what you're saying of individuals putting these on their homes, having photovoltaics on buildings. However, I do not support the big, massive solar fields where it's
No, neither
a
do
big
I.
field with panels, because everything underneath those panels is dead. If there was any grass growing, if there was any animals living there, they're history. And that's exactly why they had to relocate all these tortoises from Ivanpahs, because they couldn't survive underneath all those mirrors.
Environmental would be huge, and then you lose power every time you ship it down the line too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
well,
definitely having it right on the building, that makes a lot of sense to me. These giant, massive fields of solar panels, I just kind of scratch my head, like, who wants to live beside that thing? It's kind of not very pretty, right?
If you
What's that, Larry?
think about the cost, as you're mentioning the cost of solar photovoltaics, um, as something being more expensive or less expensive, I'm sure you probably are familiar with the company Q Cells. Q Cells products were outrageously expensive compared to the standard photovoltaics, and we're talking about 5 years ago. They're very expensive. Already, they're pretty much affordable as all the rest. It's just what the market demands. If the market demands,
if they ramp up in Australia, they'll probably get the cost down really quick, like.
exactly, and it'll be so fast that anybody who doesn't get on board with it is going to be screwed. I know I've seen it happen over the past, over the past 10 years that we've been at this. I've seen it happen. I've seen the changes, they take place, and then all of a sudden, boom, the effect is right across the board. And a lot of that has to do with the efficiency of China. Whenever a new product comes out, it doesn't seem to be safe anymore as far as intellectual property goes. I shouldn't even say safe, but it gets duplicated so quickly that it nobody has the choice other than to share. They got to share the technology, and it becomes common. And I think the reason why this doesn't matter, the whole intellectual property thing, is when something revolutionary comes out that is in line with what society wants. You know, if we were talking about a new way of pumping oil out of the ground, no one would care. What we're talking about is the efficiency of renewable energy. And I think the powers that be, the people that are involved with this industry, are are different. They want to change the world to be a cleaner environment. It's not always about making money. It has a lot to do with clean air to breathe. And I think that's really what powers a lot of these companies that are just like ours, is if they come up with something new, they're not going to hog it because it's good for the people of the world. And I don't know why it works that way. It's just we're living in a different age with the internet and the way information can be exchanged, and the way things can be copied and duplicated. And I believe, I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure this discovery made in Australia is not possible for patenting. It does not have intellectual property because it's just a different way of doing something using photovoltaics. So,
Well, I have to disagree with you a little bit on the whole that the discovery is making photovoltaics obsolete, kind of partially because of what Dan was talking about. Because in the article that I read about, and if you're interested in not knowing what we're talking about, what happened in New South Wales, Australia, at their university, you can go back. I believe the Hangout was titled Disruptive Technology, Solar Power Record Broken, or Record Broken. If you just look for that, then you can find out all about it. But back to what Dan was saying, because they described that their new PV technology would not be conducive to having on your roof. They said that basically the technology would be best used in solar towers that would probably look something like what those Ivanpah towers look like, a little bit, but in a different way. So, if it's going to be something that's going to be really expensive and that it's like this tower thing, I think that the focus in Australia is to do it on power plant scale. I don't think their focus is on selling it to individuals that are looking to be off-grid. And so then there's the issue of transporting it. So I don't really agree that the technology may put photovoltaics and make them obsolete. However, I don't think it's going to happen as fast as you're predicting.
But the main point here is they're sharing the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, like Tesla, he let his patents up for everybody.
They're not shelving this information like they would have done in the past. They have shared the information, which means others can look at the information and use their own imagination.
Mm-hmm.
What can
and come up with something else and put their product as obsolete. That can happen too, really fast.
Bottom line, they're going to keep the panels they've got, and if something's new out there and they want to add to their array, they would get the best panels available if the cost was there.
That's right.
Because there's all kind of panels now that are more efficient than the others. Like they put some on 1 year, and then 5 years later they put some on, and it's a different style, but it was a better quality product, or maybe more cost efficient.
Right.
But yeah, that's
and maybe that's what we're looking at as far as the entire industry goes. Maybe Ivanpah is just a stage. Maybe it's in 5 years Ivanpah's towers will be gone, and they'll have some sort of photovoltaic or a solar heat collector with electrocrown there um, putting out more power than all their mirrors in their tower.
And the tortoises can come home. But yeah, basically the whole premise of having this disruptive technology hangout is kind of to clarify our own thoughts about what we've been working on, and at the same time come up with ideas that other people can potentially expand on. Because in the world of business, you don't necessarily have to invent something new to be successful. If you can take something that already exists and improve it, by either making it more affordable or more efficient, basically that is the secret to success. It's all about anticipating what the market wants and being able to provide what people want. And if you can provide it for a lower cost than what's already out there, or if you can provide it more efficiently than what already exists out there, then that's the secret to success. And so many times companies get super successful and they kind of forget that innovation that they had, and then somebody else comes along their product and puts them out of business. It happens all the time. So basically, yeah, these hangouts are just for people to access, to get ideas, to be able to, just to be able to create a better experience for all of us. So if there's a product or service out there that you can improve on, or that you can deliver more efficiently or affordably, that's basically your foot in the door to being able to create income.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
and you got to adapt. You have to adapt or die.
That's right. So and that's kind of an advantage for us being a smaller project at the moment. Like for Ivanpah, they can't just turn their back on what they're doing or to completely change what they're doing big. But for us, we just have a small prototype. We could completely overhaul it in a day, and it would be something different. And we've had to do that several times over the course of designing and coming up with the most affordable and efficient product that we can.
Well, I'm sure.
So, do you guys have any?
I'm sure things will be quite different once we're in the market. Like, well, once our prototype is ready for market, I think things are going to be quite a bit different. When you look at companies like Bechtel, the reason why they get a lot of government support is that they're one of the only games in town. So once we're out there in the market with our technology, I think we'll be part of the game that is played in the power industry, and especially the renewable energy. I think we're going to be a good player in that game. Just give us a few more days.
Yeah, especially on the affordability level, because really, I think that we've spent probably 10, 20 times more money on patents than on actual materials. And some of the most expensive materials that we've invested in for this project have actually turned out not to work, and we found cheaper alternatives that do work. So that's been kind of cool, and I think definitely we can be a major player just on the basis of affordability. So anybody out there that's watching this and is like, I don't even know what they're talking about, you can visit Larry's website at kingsss.ca, and that will basically give you a good description, be a place to contact Larry, and he can answer your questions. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
It looks like with the new government in Alberta and in the federal government, there's a better chance of startups getting into the solar energy.
Definitely. We talked to a government representative a couple weeks ago, and he told us there's a huge amount of funding made available. Unfortunately, you have to access it through the bank, but once we get a few more successful tests under our belt, we should definitely look into applying for some of that funding.
I actually read an article in the journal where the oil and gas, what do they call it, where they have every year for oil and gas to have booths and showcase their business.
Trade show, yeah.
Yeah, trade show. They're down to from 200 down to about 150 but now they're letting in solar energy and hot water solar and all kinds of energy efficiencies in there in the door because of they say it's going to be a transition period where they kind of energy is energy now. And
Awesome.
it gives access to the oil field guys that they say are electricians to take a course in photovoltaics and change from AC to DC and get involved in the business if they're out of work from the oil patch.
Well, I think
Perfect.
that's
And
why
lots of oil patch, they do use photovoltaics.
I think that's why we were invited to that thing that we went to, Trish.
Yeah, probably. It's in demand. Oh yeah, and we did a hangout there too, but the audio is so bad you can't hear any of it. But yeah, we did a hangout and recorded the whole meeting with the oil and gas perspective. It was like the lowdown on low oil. It was talking about lower oil prices and how it was affecting businesses and stuff, and exactly like what Dan was talking about. A lot of companies are wanting to transition into sustainable energy because the oil and gas jobs are kind of drying up with the low oil price, and people are it's in demand. People are demanding that we use these resources more wisely, and that we clean up the environment and kind of turn back some of the damage that has been done for wildlife and water supplies and just for the health and wellness of all of us. So yeah, we got like 1 minute left, and then I'm going to be jumping on to the Empower Hour. If you're on the free energy page, there is a link, a button below that you can tune in, and we're going to be listening to our $1 Million Mama, Tracy Walker. She's a single mom who's earned a 7-figure income on the internet, and she's going to be sharing some of her secrets of success in internet marketing, which is a whole nother disruptive technology all in itself. Most people have probably realized that a lot of brick and mortar business is transitioning to click and order, where a lot more people are making purchases online rather than having to go into a store. You can just go to eBay and they'll bring it right to your door. So you can go ahead and click the button and join me on the Empower Hour. And if not, we will be back here same time, same place on Thursday. And we'll be talking about another new technology or some development in some arena of disruptive technology. So thank you so much to Larry and Dan for joining me. Before I go, I want everybody to know I'm a firm believer that in this life, absolutely anybody can be, do, and have anything they want, or we can have everything we want, and I choose everything, and I hope all you guys will too. So click the link, and Tracy Walker should be able to give us some advice on how to do that. And if I don't see you in the future, I'll see you all in the pasture tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye, Dan. Bye, Larry.
Yeah, bye.